what we are seeing today in Jammu and Kashmir is an actually enhanced level of violence, which is very clearly visible. And what is important is that we need to understand that there are 2-3 dimensions to this particular violence. Unlike the previous set of violence, this time anyone who's not a local is being targeted, who's not a local Muslim. You have seen Kashmiri Pandits have been targeted, outsiders have been targeted, and outsiders who are being targeted, it's Muslims, non-Muslims, government officials have been targeted. And recently now, of course, a 22-point ISI's game plan has been unveiled, which says that anybody who has been a resident in Jammu and Kashmir needs to be targeted. The second important fact is that while targeting people this time, there is no consideration for the locals of Kashmir because they are targeting laborers. Please understand, most of the laborers in Jammu and Kashmir belong to, are from outside the state. And if you actually target the labor, you will find that a lot of people who are working in Kashmiri's homes and orchards, etc., will not be there. The tourism will get affected. The tourists will not come to this place because there will be a fear psychosis. And this comes at a time because last month itself, I think there was not a single room available in most of the tourist spots in Jammu and Kashmir. There was a huge rush of tourists into Jammu and Kashmir. So this particular type of offensive is taking into account the fact that this could alienate them from the local population. Still this sort of an violence is taking place. So what is the reason for this? And I have a very strong feeling that one needs to correlate it with what's happened in Afghanistan. When Taliban entered Kabul on 15th of August and subsequently managed to capture the entire Afghanistan, it has unraveled a lot of things. And it has had a direct impact on Jammu and Kashmir. And how it has happened, I'd like to bring it out. Firstly, what has happened is that the ISI, which has been the main force behind Taliban, and was till then focusing both on Pakistan's western frontiers as well as eastern frontiers, has now become relieved because it has no challenge now on the west. Its now focus is primarily onto the eastern frontier. And as a result, what we say is that ISI has actually renewed its effort to cause turbulence in Jammu and Kashmir. This increased level of violence is nothing but a result of that particular factor. Because for last 2 years or so, there was absolute normalcy. The Jammu and Kashmir was progressing. There was a huge investment coming in. The tourist rush was there. And in fact, the DP World, the Dubai-based company, has just signed an MOU for a huge investment, creating a logistics hub in Srinagar. So all these investments coming and the global community perceiving was looking at it that it has now actually perfectly fine. So it is at this juncture that ISI feels that now that it has got no involvement on the West, it can focus its attention. The second thing which we need to understand is that with Taliban's so-called victory over the United States, there is of course also a resurgence. Any ragtag militia feels that if Taliban can defeat the United States, the most powerful military in the world, they can also probably take. So this has actually reinvigorated the insurgent outfits. Now this we need to understand. The third important facet is that with Taliban in control of Afghanistan, there is also an ideological focus. Taliban is not any ordinary insurgent outfit. It's an outfit which is associated with global terrorist outfits. Al-Qaeda wants to wage a jihad under Taliban leadership, the Amirul Mu'minin. So there is a strong theological dimension as far as Taliban is concerned. Now, with that theological dimensions, Afghanistan has already become and will in times to become a bigger hub of global Islamic terrorist outfits. We already have all sorts of radical Islamist outfits now housed in Afghanistan. So this radical Islamist thought, the jihadi thought, will also radiate from Afghanistan. And I think that is already radiating, and that's impact which we are seeing. Of late, there has been a resurgence of jihadi ideology in Jammu and Kashmir. And the last or the most important facet which we need to understand is that now, with military challenge to Taliban within Afghanistan more or less over, except for some terrorist acts by Islamic State, the foot soldiers of Taliban have largely become unemployed. And most of them for decades have known only one profession, that is the profession of arms. And if anybody expects them that they'll start plowing the fields, that's not going to happen. So they are going to move into other battlefields. And I have a feeling that some of them have actually moved to Jammu and Kashmir. Because what you are seeing now is, you are not getting Lashkar terrorist or HM terrorist. You are now hearing the names of new outfits. Now, who are these new outfits? These new outfits could well be those Afghan terrorists who have moved into this particular area and have been given a new nomenclature to actually indulge in this sort of terrorism. What we are seeing in Punch, where the terrorists have been holding on for last 7-8 days, shows that these terrorists are battle hardened. We have lost 9 soldiers in Punch area. 9 soldiers have been martyred. Now, this can only be done by battle-hardened terrorists. So I have a feeling that now you see certain terrorists who have infiltrated into Kashmir who are already battle-hardened or have trained in Afghanistan who have moved into Jammu and Kashmir. So they are probably fighting. And again, we need to understand this particular fact that this violence in Punch is very, very significant. Because for a decade now, more than a decade, in fact, almost close to 2 decades, there has been, I wouldn't say 2 decades, decade plus, there has been no violence outside Kashmir Valley. The terrorism cases in Punch, Rajouri and other parts of Jammu region have actually vanished for a long, long time. Now, this attempt is again also to expand the arena of this particular terrorism outside the Kashmir Valley into Jammu region. Because crossing over into Jammu, this shows that the terrorists and their sponsors, the ISI, is very, very keen that this arena needs to be widened. There is, of course, immense pressure at this point of time from ISI to increase these acts of violence in Jammu and Kashmir. And there are 2-3 reasons for it, besides what has happened in Afghanistan, as I told you. Firstly, ISI realized that for last 2 years or so, they have not been able to do anything, achieve anything much. And Jammu Kashmir had actually started progressing very fast. There were huge developmental efforts which were going on, and things had become virtually normal. The tourist rush was unprecedented. So they needed to do something because they felt that if we don't do anything, some things will become normal. The second, they wanted to expand this particular arena. There was also a very important facet. Of course, the winters are about to set in, the border process will close, infiltration will have to perforce come down. So this was their last opportunity, and that's one of the reasons why we are seeing. There's also a very, very important domestic factor which has actually necessitated this heightened level of insurgency or terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. And that is, at this point of time, there is actually a minor conflict within Pakistan between the army chief and the prime minister. As you remember, just a few days back, the army chief announced the army postings, which included posting of DG ISI as a corps commander and repositioning another army officer as DG ISI. To which Imran Khan, the prime minister, has objected. He said the prerogative of appointing DG ISI is mine. The army headquarters should have sent a name of 4 or 5 officers and I should have interviewed them and selected. His spokesperson has also gone ahead and said that he wanted the current DG ISI to continue for a few months because Afghanistan has been a very, very important factor. We need to understand also that Lieutenant General Faiz, the outgoing DG ISI, was in a very big way involved in Afghanistan. He was the one who went to Kabul to ensure that the government was installed. He was the one who went to Kabul to ensure that the Panjshir Valley resistance was wiped off. He was the one who ensured that Taliban came to power. Now, this controversy has acquired a big impetus because in Pakistan, there is a big issue. For the first time, the Prime Minister is trying to assert his authority, saying that it is his prerogative. And of course, Army Chief has sent it. So ISI also has a vested interest at this point of time to divert the local attention away from happenings within Pakistan and draw attention. And that's why we are seeing There are a lot of activities happening. Today, Pakistan came out with a very, very foolish assertion that an Indian submarine was in Pakistani waters, although even as per the coordinates shown by their video, it was almost 150 nautical miles from Pakistani. So all these actions are taking place because at this point of time, Pakistan also wants that the domestic attention as well as international attention should be diverted away from this civil military dissonance that is visible within Pakistan and should be diverted towards other. Now, in these lights, we are seeing a grave human rights violation. As I said, Kashmiri Pandits had already been hounded. Now that they just started coming back, they are again being targeted. These migrants are being targeted. Many of them are actually eligible for permanent residentship of Jammu and Kashmir because they have been living in that area for 10, 15 years or more. So they could get the domicile. They are being targeted. The government officials are being targeted. The security forces are being targeted. And a deliberate attempt is being made to expand the arena of insurgency and violate the human rights of minorities and other people living in these particular areas. So this is a very, very big issue.